Well, good morning, guys. I can't believe I'm giving you another video of the left-hand door in my 2000 Suburban. The problem is this. The power window control has been slow to move for some time, and I've tried lubricating it with silicone paste, haven't got very far. And then more recently, earlier this morning, my wife made the remark that she couldn't get the window to go up or down, and at one point it was frozen down. We brought it home, and it seems to be an intermittent problem. And so I'm not sure if it's a switch, if it's bad contacts in the motor, or if it's a wiring problem. So what I've done is I've taken off the door panel. Now, I'm not going to show you everything here, but to take the door panel off, you use a screwdriver to pry up some of these pieces, and then underneath those you'll find some 7mm screws here, and then there's one underneath. And then once you get those screws undone, you can lift the whole door up and then pull it off. And there's a plastic liner that you take off. And then of course you've got to undo the wiring to the marker lights, to the speaker, and to the control for the seat. And then after that the whole door panel will come off for you. Now here's the motor in here. And I took the negative lead of the battery off just so I wouldn't get an alarm. And now that I need to test the wiring, I've put the switch back into place, and I've redone the negative pole of the battery, so now we're live. And fortunately, it is working, but I'm going to keep testing it to see if I can get the fault to reproduce itself, and then I'll do a test here to see whether or not I'm actually getting power to the motor, and to try and decide whether or not it's a problem with the contacts in the motor, or whether it's again another problem with this switch. So right now, I'm working on the mechanical aspect of this. Of course, power window problems can be three things. It can be a mechanical impediment to the window moving up, it can be a problem with the motor, or it can be a problem with the wiring. And so while I'm in here, I'm just going to lubricate the slides with my favorite lubricant, which is silicone paste. And hopefully that'll take care of the resistance part of this. Well, let me give you a closer look at this door. This is the bottom, that's the top, that's the front, and that's the back. And of course we're looking from the inside of the door medially towards where the driver would be sitting. In contrast with most doors have a lot of push pins that you pry out. In fact, this one had none. Instead it had a lot of hooks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all of them hooked over and pointing downward. And there really were only two screws, this one here and that one there. And I found another screw that I undid right in here, but in fact I didn't need to undo that one because that one's not holding it on. So you undo those two screws, get the handles and the plastic covers off and the switches off, and then lift the door up and the whole thing comes apart. One of the things about intermittent electrical problems is that when you get it all apart, all of a sudden it works, and that's what's happening here. I've lubricated the slides really well and it's working better, but I haven't gotten it to fail yet. While I've been waiting, I've back probed the 2-pole connectors to the motor, and like most of these motors, you wire it one way, you get 12 volts, you wire it the other way, you get it minus 12 volts, a reversible motor in a sense. And so while I'm waiting, I'm going to do a voltage drop test here. Now, I've run the battery down a little bit with all this testing I've done. So we'll hit the button, make the window go up and down, and we'll see what happens to the voltage. Okay, now we're going down, 1.8, and now we're going up. So I think that's a pretty good voltage drop given the circumstance. Now with an intermittent problem it could be that suddenly things won't work, and that'll end up proving itself to be a switch problem. Or maybe with just the lubrication I've taken the resistance of the motor down to the point that it's able to slide now. But with just lubrication it seems to be working fine, so I'm going to snap it back together again and we'll see what happens. So here I've got the motor disconnected and I'm measuring the static resistance of the motor, 0.8 ohms. So not a whole lot of resistance there, at least from a static perspective, so it probably draws a fair amount of current. Well, what do you do if the window's halfway up and you take it all apart and you realize that the motor is good but the switch is bad? Maybe it's going to rain, or maybe you're worried about the security of your vehicle. How are you going to get that window back up? Well, that's pretty simple. You just have to remember a couple of things. The first is that these motors are powered on 12 volts. And so 12 volts to the one side of the switch raises it, 12 volts to the other side of the switch lowers it. And so you hook up a couple of jumper wires to the motor and hook up one side to ground and the other side to power. And I'm going to do that right here. And then your switch will rise or fall depending on which way you've got it switched. If it goes the wrong way, then just reverse the wires and you're good. You can get that window up and do the rest of the repair at a time when it's more convenient for you. Well, at that point I buttoned the vehicle up and it worked fine, but I was left with an uneasy feeling that I might have missed an intermittent electrical problem, and so I put these video clips on the shelf for a period of time that ended up being about 3.5 years. And over that time, I can tell you I still have the car and it's working fine and the problem hasn't recurred. And so I think in retrospect, I'm much more confident that this was simply a slider problem and not an intermittent electrical issue. It does emphasize a recurring theme that I tend to overthink problems, and often the solution is a lot easier than you think. As my friend Eric O would say, if I can do it, you can do it too. I hope this video helps with your repair. Thanks for watching.